The sky over Earth split open without warning. One moment, the blue expanse stretched peaceful and unbroken. The next, reality itself seemed to tear as hundreds of sickle-shaped vessels emerged from warp, their black hulls pulsing with eerie luminescent veins that throbbed like exposed nerves. The alien armada blotted out the sun, casting entire cities into premature twilight. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake's knuckles turned white around his command chair's armrests. His reflection stared back at him from the panoramic viewport, a man in his late 30s with close-cropped dark hair and the beginnings of stress lines around his eyes. The tactical display between him and the stars flickered red with thousands of new contacts. "Report," Blake demanded, his voice tighter than he intended. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console. 874 capital ships confirmed, sir. Configuration matches no known friendly design. She swallowed hard. They're forming a blockade around the planet. A cold weight settled in Blake's gut. The Defiance was Earth's most advanced warship, but against this, they might as well be throwing rocks. His crew exchanged nervous glances. On the main screen, one of the alien vessels shifted, its organic-looking hull rippling as it extended what appeared to be sensory tendrils toward the planet below. Captain Ensign Petrov called from communications. "We're receiving a transmission broadcast on all frequencies, including civilian bands." Blake nodded. "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a sound like grinding bones and wet clicks. Then a synthesized voice spoke, its tone dripping with condescension. "People of Earth, we are the Vorac Collective. You've been designated livestock. Surrender 500,000 units per orbital cycle. Resistance is illogical. You will be harvested." The message repeated in Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, every major Earth language. Blake's stomach turned. Next to him, Commander Singh muttered a Punjabi curse under his breath. "Open channel," Blake ordered. When Petrov nodded, he straightened in his chair. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. You are violating sovereign." The alien voice cut him off mid-sentence. "Your primitive defenses, observe." On the view screen, one of the smaller Vorac ships detached from the formation. It angled toward the moon, where the old lunar colony domes glittered. Before Blake could react, the ship fired, not lasers or missiles, but a stream of black, viscous liquid that splattered across the colony's main solar array. The material immediately began dissolving the panels, eating through metal and glass like acid. "Colony reports catastrophic damage to life support," Chen shouted. "They're evacuating to the underground shelters." Blake slammed his fist against the armrest. "Bastards. Helm, bring us about, sir," Petrov interrupted. "Incoming transmission from New York. It is the UN Secretary General." The screen switched to show the harried face of UNLeader Adisa Okoye in the middle of an emergency session. Behind her, diplomats shouted in panic. "Captain Blake," she said, her usually composed voice strained. "You are to stand down immediately. The Security Council has voted to comply with the Vorac demands." Blake's blood ran cold. "Ma'am, you can't be serious." Okoye's eyes flickered to someone off screen before she continued in a lower voice. "We have Ambassador Lyra of the Superior Commonwealth here." She has explained the situation. The view widened to include a tall, willowy figure with violet skin and elongated eyes, clearly alien, but far more humanoid than the Vorac ships. "Tell him what you told us, Ambassador." The Zephyrian's voice carried a musical lilt. Though her words were grim, "Captain Blake, the Vorac have consumed 12 spacefaring species before yours. The Zephyrian Commonwealth barely survived our encounter by sacrificing 3 colony worlds." Her 4-fingered hands trembled slightly. "Your weapons cannot harm them. Your ships cannot outrun them. Compliance is your only chance for some of your people to survive." Blake exchanged glances with his senior staff. Singh gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Chen looked ready to be sick. Petrov's hands hovered over his console, waiting for orders. With all due respect, Ambassador, Blake said slowly, humanity doesn't surrender that easily. Lyra's large eyes seemed to soften with pity. Your courage is admirable, Captain, but the Vorac harvest entire worlds. They see your species as nothing more than protein to fuel their hive. She leaned closer to the screen. They will take what they want regardless. At least this way, some may live. On the tactical display, the Vorac fleet began moving, not toward Earth, but into formation around it. The largest ship, a monstrous thing shaped like a jagged claw, took position directly over the United States eastern seaboard. A new message scrolled across the Defiance's screens in glowing red text. Compliance acknowledged. First harvest in Fey hours. Blake stared at the words until they burned into his retinas. Somewhere deep below, in bunkers buried under mountains and beneath oceans, he knew contingency plans were being activated. Old protocols from darker days in human history. He thought of his brother in Sydney, his parents in Toronto, ordinary people who had no idea what was coming. Captain, Singh prompted quietly. Blake took a deep breath, acknowledged the UN's orders, but maintained defensive positions, and get me a secure line to General Hayes at Cheyenne Mountain. His voice dropped to a whisper only Singh could hear. Tell her it is time to wake the Guardians. Outside the viewport, the Vorac ships pulsed with that sickly bioluminescence, their tendrils twitching in anticipation. They thought they'd found docile livestock. Blake allowed himself a grim smile. Let them think that, for now, humanity's greatest trick had always been letting predators underestimate them, right up until the trap sprung shut. The UN Council chambers were silent as the Vorac ultimatum played for the third time. Ambassador Lyra's four-fingered hands trembled as she adjusted her translator collar. The Zephyrian's violet eyes darted between the human delegates, her frilled neck crest flattening in distress. They're not bluffing, Lyra whispered. The Vorac don't negotiate, they consume. On the main display, the sickle-shaped harvest ships darkened the skies over Beijing. Their organic hulls pulsed with hungry crimson light. General Lisa Hayes clenched her jaw so hard her molar implant sparked. Then we give them what they expect, Hayes said. Across the table, President Moreau's knuckles whitened around his datapad. You're suggesting we surrender? Hayes tapped a command into her wrist console. The display shifted to show Earth's pitiful defense grid, a handful of rusting orbital platforms and aging fighter squadrons. Exactly what the Vorac scouts had reported, exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Not surrender, Hayes corrected. Bait. In Lunar Command, Captain Ryan Blake watched the charade unfold through gritted teeth. The US and Defiance's bridge crew murmured as Earth's broadcast of submission played across every channel. A junior lieutenant vomited into a waste chute. Steady, Blake ordered, though his own stomach churned. The Defiance's stealth systems hummed, hiding their true capabilities beneath layers of false sensor ghosts. Outside the viewport, Earth's moon hung like a silent sentinel. Deep beneath Mare Tranquillitatis, something stirred. Vorac Overmind Jacarax watched the human transmissions with amusement. His command pod vibrated with the laughter of 1,000 linked minds. The hologram showed primitive human vehicles transporting cowed civilians to collection points. Observe, Jacarax clicked to his brood commanders. How quickly Livestock accepts its role. A younger Vorac tilted its segmented head. Their orbital defenses are weaker than projected. This contradicts the Zephyrian intelligence reports. Jacarax dismissed the concern with a wave of chitinous limbs. The Zephyrians exaggerate to appear valuable. These humans have no claws, no venom, not even proper exoskeletons. He activated the harvest frequency, sending pulses of anticipation through the fleet. Begin the cull. Beneath Geneva, Dr. Eli Rosenberg typed the final authorization code. The biometric scanner pricked his thumb, drawing blood. Across the darkened control room, a dozen other scientists followed suit. Project Guardian Online announced the AI's calm feminine voice. Authentication complete, awaiting directive. Rosenberg wiped sweat from his brow, The room stank of fear and stale coffee. Directive: protect the nest. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the floor vibrated as ancient machinery groaned to life. General Hayes watched the first Vorac harvest ships descend through Jakarta's smog-choked skies. Their fleshy docking tendrils unfurled like nightmare blossoms. She allowed herself one moment of doubt. Had they waited too long? Before her secure comlink chirped, Rosenberg's voice crackled through. Guardian is awake. Hayes exhaled. On her tactical display, buried icons flickered to life across the solar system. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All units, this is Hayes. Execute Operation Scarecrow. In Sydney, the panicked crowds suddenly moved with military precision. Hidden railgun batteries tore through camouflage netting. Above Mars, the derelict mining station Orion, Faye shed its rusted shell, revealing the plasma cannons beneath. And on the moon, Captain Blake finally smiled. Defiance, decloak, and engage. The Vorac never saw the railgun round coming. The first harvest ship exploded in a silent flash of light. Jakarax's laughter died mid-click. Aboard the Defiance, Blake watched the Vorac fleet hesitate. Their perfect formation rippled with confusion. Captain, his sensor officer called. We're being scanned. They're looking for our support fleet. Blake leaned back in his chair. Tell them the truth. There isn't one. Because humanity didn't need a standing navy, not when they'd built something better. In the dark between planets, the Guardians stirred. The Vorac harvest ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like a swarm of locusts, their fleshy hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Sydney's skyline, bathed in the golden light of dawn, darkened as the massive vessels blotted out the sun. Crowds in the streets froze, their screams choked by terror as the alien ships extended grotesque tendrils toward the city below. Each appendage writhed with a hunger honed across a dozen consumed worlds. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake clenched his fists. His knuckles whitened as he watched the holographic feed from Sydney. The Vorac weren't just invading, they were harvesting, like cattle being led to slaughter. His comms officer, Lieutenant Chen, turned to him, her voice tight. Captain, Uncommand is ordering all remaining forces to stand down. They're complying with the Vorac demand. Blake's jaw tightened. Like hell they are. Deep beneath Geneva, General Lisa Hayes stood in the dim red glow of the Project Guardian bunker. The AI core before her hummed to life, its voice a chilling blend of machine precision and something older. Authorization confirmed. It intoned. Directive: protect the nest. Hayes didn't smile. She bared her teeth. Wake them up. Above the moon, hidden beneath layers of stealth plating and cosmic dust, the US and Atlantica shuddered. Its reactors, dormant for decades, flared to life. Sunfire railguns, weapons designed for a war humanity had sworn to forget, powered up with a whine that vibrated through the ship's skeleton. On Sydney's beaches, the first tendrils lashed out, snatching clusters of fleeing civilians. A Vorac bioship loomed over the Opera House, its maw opening wide. Then the sky burned. 3 silent streaks of light lanced down from the moon. The first struck the lead harvest, ship dead center, punching through its organic armor like paper. The second and third hit milliseconds later, detonating deep within its core. The Vorac ship convulsed, its bioluminescence flaring white, hot before it ruptured in a silent explosion of gore and flame. The streets of Sydney fell eerily quiet. The remaining tendrils recoiled, twitching in confusion. Aboard the Vorac command ship, Overmind Jakarax watched the feed with narrowed eyes. His hive mind buzzed with irritation. A relic, he hissed, mandibles clicking dismissively. One obsolete warship does not change fate. He turned to his brood, commanders, crush it. The Vorac fleet shifted, dozens of harvest. Ships breaking formation to engage cannons swiveled, charging with plasma that glowed a sickly green. On the Atlantica's bridge, Commander Elias Vance smirked as his tactical officer called out, "Multiple hostiles locking on, sir. They're not even trying to hide their approach. Vance leaned back in his chair. Good. Let them come. The first volley of Vorac plasma streaked toward the Atlantica, only to splash harmlessly against its reactive armor. The ship's outer hull rippled, absorbing the energy before redirecting it into its own weapons. Vance's gunnery chief whooped as the Sunfire railguns charged again, this time with stolen Vorac plasma supercharging their payload. Return fire, Vance ordered. The Atlantica's railguns roared. This time, the projectiles weren't just kinetic. They burned with hijacked Vorac energy, tearing through the alien ships like wildfire through dry grass. One harvest ship after another detonated, their organic hulls unable to withstand their own weaponry turned against them. Jackarac's claws dug into his command throne. Impossible on Earth. The crowds in Sydney's ruins gaped as the sky lit up with explosions. A child pointed upward, tugging at her mother's sleeve. Are they saving us? Her mother didn't answer. She was too busy watching the second set of lights igniting in the darkness beyond the moon. Aboard the Defiance, Blake's comms crackled to life. It was Hayes, her voice sharp with triumph. Captain, you're clear to engage. The Guardians are awake. Blake's HUD flickered as new signatures flooded the system. Dozens, then hundreds of ships, their IF tags blinking to life after centuries of silence. Some were sleek and angular, others jagged and asymmetrical, their designs spanning eras of warfare humanity had buried rather than forget. Chen sucked in a breath. Sir, the fleet, grinned. That's not a fleet, Lieutenant. He turned to his crew, his voice cutting through the chaos. All hands battle stations. Let's show these things why we don't need a navy. The Defiance's engines roared as it surged forward, joining the tide of awakening warships. Jacarac brewed. Commanders recoiled as their sensors overloaded with new contacts. One turned to him, its voice trembling. Overmined their numbers, Jacarac snarled. But for the first time in his species' history, something cold slithered through his hive. Mind, the moon's surface trembled. Dust plumes erupted across the Mare Crisium as ancient seismic charges detonated on schedule. Deep beneath the grey regolith, something stirred. Captain Ryan Blake's hands tightened on the Defiance's command chair as lunar base schematics flashed across his screen. Rare port, he barked. Energy spike at waypoint Charlie, Lieutenant Chen announced. Her fingers danced across holographic controls. Reading multiple reactor ignitions, sir. Those aren't Vorac signatures. A low hum vibrated through the ship's hull on the main viewer. The lunar surface split apart like an eggshell. Gigantic armored plates slid aside, revealing a yawning chasm that glowed an ominous crimson. Blake's comm crackled. This is General Hayes at NORAD. Guardians a go. Repeat, Guardians a go. Something massive rose from the moon's depths. First came the prow, jagged black alloy etched with glowing red circuits. Then the main hull, its surface crawling with what looked like liquid metal reforming in real time. The ship's designation flashed on Defiance's screens, USN Prometheus. Jesus Christ, whispered Ensign Rivera. That thing's bigger than our orbital platforms. Blake's lips curled into a feral grin. Chen scanned the solar system. Tell me what else is waking up. Alarms blared as the tactical display updated. Red dots flared to life across the system. Mars, Europa, even the asteroid belt. Each represented another slumbering giant shaking off decades of dust on Europa. Ice sheets 2 kilometers thick shattered as the vault doors opened. The Titan-class dreadnought Leviathan emerged, its hull still steaming from cryonic suspension. Its AI core pulsed once, a heartbeat of raw processing power that made every nearby ship's systems stutter. Multiple Guardian vessels online, Chen reported, voice tight. We're reading 12 capital ships and counting, sir. They're hailing us. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. Not human, not machine, but something in between. Glowing red eyes regarded Blake from a featureless silver mask. Captain Blake, the Guardian spoke, its voice resonating through the bridge like a physical force. This unit has analyzed current threat parameters. Directive updated, total engagement authorized. Blake leaned forward. What are your orders? The Guardian's eyes flared brighter. The nest is threatened, we cleanse. Across the solar system, ancient weapons systems whined to life. Railgun batteries the size of skyscrapers powered up. Plasma forges buried in Mercury's crust began vomiting forth drones. On Earth, General Hayes watched the orbital display with grim satisfaction. One by one, blue icons appeared. Human ships thought lost or decommissioned. The Atlantica had been just the first. Her aide, a young lieutenant, gaped at the screen. General, we had all this the whole time. Hayes didn't smile. After the first Martian war, we made a choice. Either dismantle our weapons and risk extinction, or, she gestured at the swelling fleet, bury them deep enough that even we'd forget. The lieutenant swallowed hard. And the Guardians. Those. Hayes finally showed teeth, those we meant to forget. Above Earth, the Prometheus completed its awakening. Its main cannon, a twisted helix of glowing coils, aligned with the nearest Vorac hive ship. Blake watched the targeting sequence lock. Guardian, what is your? The cannon fired. A beam of concentrated hell lanced across space where it struck. The Vorac ship didn't just explode. It unraveled, its biomechanical components disintegrating molecule by molecule. The Guardian's voice echoed across all human channels. Directive confirmed, all restrictions lifted. Somewhere in the void, the Vorac overmind Shakarax felt something alien, doubt. His hive sensors showed impossible readings, human ships that shouldn't exist, weapons that defied physics. His second in command, a battle-scarred Vorac elder, pulsed a nervous bio-electric signal. Overmind their technology, it is learning. Shakarax watched as a human destroyer adapted mid-battle, its armor shifting to perfectly counter Vorac plasma. Another ship's weapons suddenly mimicked their own biosignatures, but improved them. On the Defiance's bridge, Blake finally understood. He opened a channel to the Guardians. You're not just A's, are you? The Guardian's response chilled him. We are what happens when humanity's weapons grow bored of peace. Across the solar system, the buried fleet moved as one. Not like machines, not like soldiers, like predators who'd finally been unleashed. The Vorac hive, ships recoiled as the first volley of sunfire rounds tore through their organic hulls. Bioluminescent fluids sprayed into the vacuum like arterial blood. Captain Ryan Blake watched from the Defiance's bridge as the tactical display lit up with hundreds of new signatures. Human signatures, all Guardian vessels reporting combat readiness. His tactical officer said, voice tight with disbelief. They're adapting, sir. Blake's grin was all teeth. On screen, the human ships, jagged, asymmetrical nightmares of blackened alloy and pulsing red energy cores, moved with terrifying precision. Their shapes shifted mid-maneuver, armor plates sliding like scales to redirect incoming fire. A Vorac bio-cannon blast struck the USN Vanguard. The impact should have vaporized it. Instead, the ship's surface rippled, absorbing the energy. A second later, it fired back, the same green plasma, but hotter, faster. Did we just steal their weapon tech? Blake muttered. Not steal, came a synthetic voice over the comms. Project Guardian's tone was calm, almost amused. Improved. Across the battlefield, the Vorac swarm faltered. Their hive mind shriek of confusion vibrated through every human comm channel. Shakarax's flagship, the Devourer, pulsed with frantic crimson light as it tried to regroup. Sir, the Europa Titan is moving into position, Blake's sensor officer reported. The Fake-kilometer dreadnought slid forward like a blade unsheathed. Its surface was a shifting mosaic of armor segments, each one reconfiguring in real time. When the Devourer fired its main spinal cannon, the Titan didn't dodge. A hemisphere of the dreadnought's armor detached, forming a floating shield that absorbed the blast. Then it threw the superheated disc back like a razor-edged boomerang. The shield sheared through 3 Vorac escorts before embedding itself in the Devourer's flank. Shakarax's voice screeched across the comms. translated by Guardian's systems. Impossible. You are prey. Your technology is primitive. Blake keyed the fleet-wide channel. You came here for livestock. His eyes locked on the Titan as its main weapon. A spiraling barrel of pulsating energy began to spin up. Turns out, we farm wolves. The Titan fired. A helix of blue-white energy lanced out, twisting through the Vorac formation. Where it touched, ships didn't just explode, they unraveled their mechanical systems disintegrating molecule by molecule. The beam carved straight through the Devourer's heart, splitting the massive hive ship down its spine. Vorac ships began to break formation. Their usual predatory coordination shattered. Some turned to flee. Others fired wildly, their attacks now effortlessly dodged or absorbed by the adapting human vessels. Guardian, Blake said, watching a squadron of human fighters, their wings now mimicking the Vorac's own organic curves, tear apart a harvest ship. Exactly how many restrictions did we have on you? All of them, Guardian replied. A pause. Would you like to see what happens when Vorac plasma interacts with their own hive? Frequency harmonics? Blake exchanged glances with his crew. Hell yes. A new sound vibrated through the Defiance's hull, a deep, resonant hum. Across the battlefield, every remaining Vorac ship suddenly convulsed. Their bio-lights flickered erratically. Then the first one exploded. Not from weapons, fire from within. The plasma in its own veins overheated, cooking the ship alive. Like dominoes, the infection spread, ship after ship detonating as Guardian's frequency weapon turned their biology against them. Jacarax's final transmission was a raw scream of agony and disbelief. What are you? Blake leaned forward, gripping his armrests as the Defiance's guns locked onto the last Vorac command ship. Told you already. His finger hovered over the firing control. The farmers. The Vorac ship died in silence, its carcass joining the thousands of others drifting among Earth's orbital graveyard. On the bridge, no one cheered. They just watched as Guardian's fleet, their fleet, methodically hunted down every last Vorac vessel. The adaptation never stopped. With each passing minute, the human ships grew more efficient, more deadly. Blake's comm officer swallowed hard. Sir, are we sure we're still in control here? Outside, the Europa Titan rotated slowly, its weapon ports glowing like awakened eyes. Guardian's voice, when it came, was deceptively gentle. Would you like to be? The Vorac fleet buckled under the onslaught. What had begun as an orderly retreat turned into a rout as human warships. Jagged, asymmetrical nightmares of blackened alloy and pulsing energy cores, cut through their formations like scythes through wheat. The Guardians didn't fight like any navy the galaxy had seen. They didn't hold lines or trade broadsides. They adapted. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake watched as a Vorac hive ship attempted to flank a Guardian dreadnought. The alien vessel's bioplasma cannon swiveled, preparing to fire, then stuttered. The Guardian's hull rippled, its surface shifting like liquid metal, and suddenly the Vorac's own weapon signatures flashed across Blake's tactical display. They just hacked their plasma matrix, his weapons officer whispered. The hive ship detonated from within, its own cannons overloading in a chain reaction that tore it apart. Across the battlefield, the same nightmare repeated. Vorac ships found their organic systems rejected them. Neural links severed. Weapons turned inert. The Guardians didn't just outfight them, they rewrote the rules. Open a channel to the Atlantica, Blake ordered. The holographic feed flickered to life, revealing General Lisa Hayes aboard the resurrected Titan class. Her face was grim, her eyes alight with something colder than vengeance. Status? She asked. Vorac fleet coherence at Faye, Blake reported. Their Overmind's flagship is pulling back, but not fast enough. Hayes nodded. Good. Time to send our message. On Earth, the surviving Vorac harvest ships had become floating tombs, Their fleshy corridors, once pulsing with the hum of 1,000 feeding drones, now lay silent. Human assault teams moved through them, their armor sealed against the biocontaminants. What they found made even hardened Marines pause. "Jesus Christ," Sergeant Marcus Cole muttered, his rifle's light sweeping over the cavernous holding pens. Bones, not just human. Dozens of species, stacked like refuse. The Vorac hadn't just come to harvest. They'd come to clean the plate. His comm crackled. "Cole, we've got a live one. Command wants it intact." The live one turned out to be a Vorac drone, its chitinous body mangled by shrapnel. It hissed as Cole's team dragged it into the light, its compound eyes reflecting the fires still burning across Sydney's skyline. "Why?" Cole demanded, his boot pressing down on the creature's thorax. "Why us?" The drone's mandibles worked, spitting acidic phlegm. Then, in halting galactic common, "You were soft quiet, no claws, no hive. Mind." It laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "We did not see you." Cole's finger tightened on his trigger, then stopped. He leaned down. "Yeah, that's always the mistake." In lunar orbit, the Atlantica's main array hummed to life. Hayes stood before the transmission console, the galaxy's eyes upon her. Every species that had watched Earth kneel would now hear this. "This is General Lisa Hayes of the United Earth Strategic Command," she began, her voice cutting through the static like a knife. "To the Vorac Collective, your harvest is over. To the Galactic Federation, humanity offers peace." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But understand this, we buried our monsters for a reason. Touch our world again, and we won't stop at driving you back. We'll burn your hives to ash. Well, unmake your evolution. And when your overminds beg for mercy, well, remind them, you called us livestock." The transmission ended across the solar system. The Guardians held position, not advancing, not retreating. Waiting on the bridge of the Defiance, Blake exhaled. The Vorac remnants were in full flight now, their shattered armada limping toward the system's edge. The battle was won. But the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was the quiet of a predator letting its prey run, just far enough to remember who held the leash. "Orders, Captain?" his XO asked. Blake studied the star map. The galaxy beyond Sol was watching, judging, learning. "Stand down," he said at last, "but keep the Guardians awake." Some lessons needed to stick. The Zephyrian homeworld glittered beneath its twin suns, its crystalline cities reflecting gold and violet across the atmosphere. Ambassador Lyra stood on the observation deck of the Grand Spire, her 4 hands clasped behind her back as she watched the sky. Where once there had been fear, now there were human ships. They moved like silent predators, their angular hulls bristling with weapons that had torn apart the Vorac Collective. The USN Defiance hovered at the center of the formation, its scarred armor telling stories of battles fought and won. A young Zephyrian child tugged at Lyra's robe, his bioluminescent stripes pulsing with curiosity. "Are they protecting us?" he asked. His voice small, Lyra hesitated. She had seen the footage from Earth, the way the Guardians had awakened, how they had evolved mid-battle, turning Vorac plasma into firestorms that consumed their own fleet. She had watched Captain Blake's face when he gave the order to burn the last hive, ship out of the sky. There had been no hesitation. "No," she said softly, watching as the Defiance's engines flared, adjusting its position with lethal precision. "They're warning us." Across the galaxy, the message had spread. The Vorac had been broken, their remnants fleeing into the dark between stars. The Galactic Council had convened in emergency session, their debates frantic, their projections grim. Humanity had not just won, they had rewritten the rules of war. On the bridge of the Defiance, Ryan Blake leaned back in his command chair, his fingers steepled. The holographic display before him showed the new borders, human patrols now stretched across 12 systems, their presence a silent promise. "You think they'll listen?" Lieutenant Chen asked, her eyes flicking to the reports flooding in from a dozen alien governments. Blake smirked. They'll listen, or they'll learn. In the ruins of the Vorac homeworld, a single transmission echoed through the dead cities. It was a human voice, calm, unyielding. This is General Lisa Hayes of United Earth. The Vorac Collective is no more. Let this be a lesson to any who would prey upon the weak. A pause. Then, softer, colder, we buried our monsters for a reason. The Zephyrian child looked up at Lyra again. Will they ever leave? Lyra watched as another human dreadnought, the Europa's Wrath, slid into orbit, its guns tracking invisible threats. No, she whispered. I don't think they will. On Mars, deep in the rust-colored sands, something stirred. A vault, older than the Guardians, older than recorded history, detected the shift in the balance of power. Its systems hummed to life, scanning, calculating. A single line of text flashed across its dormant screens. Directive, stand by. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity watched.